indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on to routine matters. We can take a look at the agenda. Would anyone like to move to accept the agenda or make amendments?
And Tessa, I think technically we might need a motion for me to appear by video conference. Sorry about that.
Excellent point.
That's how we typically do the council action.
Okay.
I think it's good practice.
Can we hear such a motion?
I'll make a motion to include Mr. Lutz by video conference.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So then that brings us to the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, the agenda has been accepted. And then that brings us to the minutes of the February 2nd, 2026 meeting. Do we have any changes?
I move to approve the February 2, 2026.
Yeah.
Is that down there wrong?
February 2.
It's correct on the minutes. Regular planning and zoning commission meeting minutes.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. That brings us to public comment. Would anyone on the call like to make any public comment? All right, hearing none, that brings us to our public hearing. It looks like we have two applications to consider tonight that are related to each other. We don't, if our staff wouldn't mind
Yep, absolutely.
introducing these.
Madam Chair, I will do my best to introduce the applications. And actually, I would say, though there are two items under the public hearing, the new business item is also kind of related. This is all kind of one. It has to get three separate approvals from the town. Certain things can be approved without others, certain things cannot. But generally speaking, under consideration is a commercial building application, a special development plan, a conditional use permit, and standard plumbing located at 777 West Pine Street. It used to be, I believe, E to Z hardware is what it was prior to being a standard plumbing. The applicant has turned in general scope, what the applicant desires to add is a storage unit in the back, a pretty large storage unit for the storage of merchandise on the first floor, and then a second floor that has 3 two-bedroom apartment buildings in them. The presence of the mixed-use residential commercial is what requires the conditional use permit by the town of Pinedale, and that's covered under 160-22. Also, what's requiring the special development plan is just the function of multiple uses in multiple buildings on the same lot. It's an opportunity for planning and zoning in the town to review parking, traffic, and utility distribution on the single lot. And so they have a separate application turned in for that special development plan. Both kind of go together. However, regardless if they needed the CUP, just to have their storage unit in the back would still require the special development because it is multiple uses in multiple buildings. And then the last is this is going to be a building permit, which typically we just take these to council. The way the code is written is any commercial building permit that's in excess of $500,000 requires the sign off from the town council. Sometimes you guys don't see those because it specifically is not spelled out in 475 or 116. It says just the town council. However, since the other 3 items are going, or the other 2 items are going at the same time, we feel like it's probably the best to just show you guys the entire building permit application process. Allow you guys to weigh in on the recommendation how to proceed forward. that is the scope of the project. Town staff has worked with the applicant for over a year on this project. And we went through some different conversations. I would say there needs to be one thing added is they have converted the entire retail store area, which used to include some storage in the back, to retail store. And so we worked with them on how many parking spaces are required, ADA parking, kind of the spacing issues that are up front in the current building. And their site plan has addressed many of those concerns. They cannot fit all of the required parking spaces on the site fully. And so when you get down to new business, even though we're talking about that building permit, the piece that really matters is that parking waiver, which does require planning and zoning review. And the parking waiver they are requesting, they turned in all of the information. There's a whole packet. It kind of describes how much parking is located in what location of the town. All the extra parking spaces they're asking to count towards theirs are adjacent to their building. And a large portion of it, they are paving to make it better parking, and they have an encroachment agreement from the town to do that from about a year ago. They would like to pave that and do it. So I think under those parking conditions, the one consideration staff should be weighing in on is safe, like pedestrian movement outside of those parking areas. And then the other thing that's very clear in code is parking waivers are allowed, however, not for residential uses. And so you will see on their parking plan, they have several signage elements that reserve certain spaces for overnight parking for the residential units. And the ones that are right next to residential are indicated no overnight parking, because that is not the intention of on-street parking, is to be full-time residential parking. At least that's what it indicates in the parking waiver and parking code. So there's a lot to consider here. I think it's going to take a little time to piece through it. I've tried. This staff report has been a bit fluid for about a year now in getting to where we need to be. I have not included a recommendation on this structure. It is my opinion that they have done everything we have asked them to do. It is a complete application to do the things they are desiring to do. Are those things a good idea? I think that's for you guys to weigh in on. They are here to represent their project, and I think they can probably provide pretty good answers to get to where we need to be. Is that enough of an introduction to the project?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. All right. This is my first public hearing. So should we hear from the applicant next?
I think you can choose to do it. I've seen Mayor Murdoch and town councils do it two different ways. One is he turns it over to the applicant, allows them to fill any gaps that I have missed. And then, or he starts with the commission and allows the commission to ask questions, but you can handle it. I've seen it done both ways. Your
All right.
preference.
This has a lot of moving parts, so I think we would like to hear from the applicant. If you want to give us an overview of the issues we'll be considering.
Chad, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, my name's Chad Spencer. I'm the architect for this project. And as Abram very well described, just working with the city staff on mostly the parking issues and getting those resolving where the residents are to park. Where this kind of all stemmed from is, Standard Plumbing is looking to grow and expand in the area. And as part of that, having employees that hopefully kind of can live on site there and kind of just be an extra benefit to the city of providing additional residence for the employees of Standard Plumbing, as well as the storage on the first floor. So, they're anxious and willing to make this project successful and look forward to a positive recommendation. If you got any questions, we're here to answer them.
Does anyone on the board have questions for our staff or the applicant?
Could you explain some more about the parking waiver? What numbers are required and what is being provided?
Can someone pull up Abram, can you pull up the drawing?
I can. I'm going to make sure I grab the right one here, because the parking waiver, it was updated as part of the waiver. So I want to make sure I grab that one.
Look at page 48. Page 48.
There we go. Try to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to start by zooming in. I think in Mr. Spencer, were you going to answer the question? I'll just zoom in here, try to follow you.
Yeah, so it's.
Tell me where to go.
Yeah, you're good right there. So, again, we're looking at the entire site. So we have the existing retail, which is the existing entire front floor plan, that's there currently. It requires 25 spaces. There's the first story warehouse in the back, requires 2, 3 residential parking spots, and then the 2 accessible parking spots. So a total of 32 spaces is required for the total site. On-site parking, there's 23 parking spaces, and then there is an additional 13 along the east side of the property there. That's kind of half on the property, half off the property, to get us to a total of 36 spaces. We have provided the signage at the rear of the building for those 3 residential stalls to be the reserved parking, so that any retail patrons cannot park in those. Those are to be reserved for the residents. And then the on-site parking stalls will be signed with no overnight parking, so that again, any resident parking would need to be contained on-site during non-business hours.
So what numbers will the resident spots be if we're looking at that plan? Just to clarify.
3. Those 3 right there.
14, 15, 16.
14, 15, 16. Okay.
So it
Thank you.
looks like there's little arrows with the sign B. Reserved parking will apply to the spot number 14, 15, 16.
I see. So with 32 required and 36 provided, the parking waiver, what does that speak to explicitly?
So the 36 provided, only 23 of those are contained on the site.
Right, okay,
And because the others are utilizing the right of way, that is what's requiring the waiver. They're not considered off-street parking. Even though, I mean, based on their exhibit, you can see majority of the parking space they are providing on their property, but it's still reserving a piece of the right of way.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted it.
Okay.
That's how Ed interpreted it. So.
in town code, do we allow that kind of backup parking that we see?
Like, do we allow backup parking? So certainly, do we allow a business or a residential to do them like as an off-street parking lot? It is spelled out as no. However, the commercial district of town is very common to have the backup parking, like that first block to 2 blocks off of Pine Street.
So think like Cowboy Shop and Stockman's, those streets.
Yeah, by the coffee shop there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The one difference between this and like some considerations, where is somebody going when they park their vehicle, where do they walk to get into the building? Those other places, there is a sidewalk that someone would have access to and utilize, and that is not provided on this as presented. So
That was going to be, I have 2 questions related to that. First of all, is there room to have a walking, even just a narrow walking space to where people don't have to walk around the back of the vehicles to get to if they're parked on the side? And second of all, is there going to be another entrance somewhere that makes some of this parking that's not in the front desirable for anybody to use. Because I feel like if there's not another entrance, people are just gonna park in the parking lot next door, which goes to the other business.
Yeah, so how much room is there? So on the west side where it says sign E, what is the space between the end of the parking stall and the building?
It was.
Yeah, width. Mm-hmm. Does anyone know that?
I don't know that. I don't know if Chad knows that.
I don't, I mean, just looking at it, it's just a couple feet.
On the GIS, it looks like roughly 30 feet between the pavement and the building, maybe 30 feet.
Yeah, I think there would be room there to slide those away from the building and put a 4-foot sidewalk across the side of there if that's desired. Brandon would have to speak on the second entrance. I'm not sure if they're looking at remodeling that to add another entrance on the side or not.
No, they'd have a hard time controlling people coming in and out if they did 2 entrances. So it'll just be in the front. And then obviously there's a warehouse entrance with a man door in the back for employees. But I don't think a side entrance would really work for their store setup and control.
A question for staff, is this property, does it have enough parking spaces for its current use, or is this like a variance from when it was built? Because it seems like we're adding a lot of parking.
So the challenges behind that question is the back, third of the lot has been used for storage of materials and has been available. And I don't know how that was considered in the original permit, but the existing building, the whole building was also not retail space. So there's been a couple changes here.
Okay.
I do think 30 parking spaces seems a little high from historic knowledge of what is required in that area of town. However, I know that the front area of parking, I've seen that many times. So I think there is a need for additional parking than what's provided now. Does it need 30 spaces? I think that's a mathematical item that comes from our code.
But
Is
this
it
is,
number 25? Possibly.
but this is a fun parking lot. It keeps you on your toes.
It does. It does keep you on your toes.
I mean, I feel like it would be more beneficial or more useful to move the propane tank farther back, maybe even to that back side, and let the employees go out that way when somebody needs propane, and then you'd have the closer parking to the actual door. But still you're backing out onto the street. I don't have such a problem with backing out on the street, but I am a little concerned with not knowing exactly how much space is there and knowing that we want to keep the people closer to the building. Is that then going to push the back end of a truck out into the driving lane on the street? And, because often when you go to a place for an appliance or something, you're bringing a truck.
So if I recall, this propane tank was an issue with the town, like 20 years ago, whenever it went up. This was contentious, having the propane tank right there by the right of way. But
Because before my time,
Yeah, so you're doing before me.
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I could.
But yeah, could the applicant address that? Ms. Boyce's question?
They took the propane tank out. It's not there anymore, but the owner was hoping to put it back in for, again, being able to refill people's bottles and stuff. I'm sure there's some things we can do around it, like it never had bollards around it before, so we could bollard, it needs to be put on a concrete slab, which it was sitting on dirt before. And we could definitely install bollards all the way around the propane tank for that protection. But they would like to put it back into service to service customers.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with there being one. I just think the location of it, especially given the fact that you're not planning to add another public entrance, would make more sense to move that to the behind the building, like between this building and where you've proposed to put the warehouse, because then it is only accessible, you know, like to your employees, and to, if somebody needs it, they can pull around that way and fill it there. But that's
more like here.
I'm saying more like on the top right corner. Yeah, between the buildings, right? Yeah,
Oh, like over here.
like right in there.
Can't draw boxes trying to.
No, and I'm thinking like, you know, sitting this way between the two buildings so that it's at that back entrance, people could pull around and use that parking that isn't going to get used for anything otherwise.
There?
Yes. And then it could be filled there. And then that frees up space toward the entrance of the building, because honestly, if I go to your store, I'm not going to park in the back and walk all the way around the building to get the things that I need from inside. Instead, I'm just going to park in the neighbor parking lot, which is, you know, maybe fine most of the time, but depending on what is in there, and I know there's something else going in there now that's probably going to have more traffic, that, you know, I don't want to steal parking from a different business just because this is not a great plan. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying to work with what you've got. And it does seem like in Pinedale, I don't think we're ever going to have 30 people show up at your store at once. It's, you know, it does seem like a lot. So I'm not necessarily trying to say it's a bad plan or whatever. I'm trying to think of what makes more sense.
And I'm curious on staff's recommendation and the rest of the council's thoughts about that too. From a functional perspective, I think pushing that parking forward makes sense, but for transparency, I live off of Jackson Avenue, so I'm familiar with the traffic patterns on that street. I do not have any financial interest in this property, but I want that noted in the record. So typically you take a right-hand turn to go on Jackson, and it's kind of an accelerating turn. You go. And my concern with bringing parking closer to the street is backing out and there being some safety issues there. That said, like you mentioned, you know, 1 or 2 blocks off of Pine Street, like this is typical the further east we go. And is that where we're headed for this area as well? You know, where it's, you know, there's a number of neighborhoods at the end of Jackson, and I guess there are other streets as well. But like, have any traffic studies been done, or?
Our entire master plan has been completed. It wasn't that granulated from a town's perspective. We haven't looked at like the impacts of this. I will say the distance this is separated from, say, Pine Street compared to a lot of our other side street parking is significant. I do think it would be fine. I think there's plenty of time for a driver to react to. I think Jackson is actually way too wide and probably promotes high-speed traffic more so than it should. Like, it probably helped to narrow that road down a little bit. And I think people wouldn't, you know, I think as density comes and people feel friction, I do think drivers naturally slow down a little bit. And so as we develop different areas of town, I do think that will be done. From the perspective of, like, you know, obviously staff, we've looked at this with the applicant for a long time, and it's a very tight site. I mean, there is a lot going on in a small space here. However, from our code, everything, the proper driving widths are there, the proper parking widths are there. Okay. The only concern I still have about it is probably that same current concern on the Jackson, like backing out. I can be okay with it. I would prefer if there was a pedestrian route reserved for people and kind of steering people into the building, if you would, or steering them onto a sidewalk away from the high-speed traffic, or someone backing out and not seeing them in front of them. But I don't know, does ice slide off of the building? Will sidewalk even be that functional? That would be maybe a follow-up question to that. I think there's enough space for all of that to work.
Yeah, it's a metal roof and there's no snow retention on it currently. So yeah, ice and snow could slide right off of it.
Is the space on the east side of the building a dedicated alley, or can
It's a
they?
utility easement for the property to the east is what it is.
Okay,
And so it's not a public right of way, it's private property, it's just the building can't extend into it. I believe the water line for what is now, well, I don't even know what that's called. It used to be the Wildflower, but the building next door, their water service line comes from the north down that utility easement, as does, I believe, their natural gas.
I guess my point is, do they have space to put any parking on that side, even if it's like parallel parking?
I don't believe there's enough room for them to park and to like drive by.
Okay.
I believe that utility easement's 15 feet.
I was surprised at the number of parking spaces that were squeezed into the front. And I actually had to look it up and to see if that was a standard width, which it is. But I have a hard time imagining getting that many vehicles parked straight onto that building as well. And then like where number 4 and 5 is, where you have to back out and there's landscaping in that corner. I wonder how tight that would be if somebody was parked straight like that. And I get that when you have the straight ones, you get more spaces in, but.
Let's see if I can find a dimension. I think I asked them for that dimension, so.
And it's listed, they're 18 feet deep and 9 foot wide, but, and that seems standard, but I'm just concerned about can we really squeeze that many vehicles in front?
I forget the distance between the back of that line and this parallel, but I believe it was over 24 feet, which is what our code requires.
To the landscaping?
To the next parallel parking space.
Okay.
I think, I'm not seeing, I'm gonna stop sharing, so I'm not perusing all over this document for a second.
Well, it does feel like there's enough space to back out, even with somebody's parked there. I felt like where the trees are kind of goes further in, but maybe I'm mistaken.
I think there's also like inventory sometimes in the parking
That
areas
could be.
briefly, like on a rotating basis.
And I feel like standard plumbing has went away from that a little
Yes.
bit compared to A to Z. I think there was like fertilizer and mulch and those types of things that were out there.
I was kind of curious. It sounds like our town code only requires half a parking space per bedroom. It just seemed like in some instances that's not going to be realistic. Like I think of a family with 2 parents who need to have 2 vehicles to go different places, but they also have 2 bedrooms because they have some kids. I'm assuming that this is employee housing, but separate from complying with the town code, is there any consideration that we're actually going to have more employee vehicles that need to be on site, or what will be done to control that?
In the past, I know that the employees have all parked on that west side along the street, just on the dirt in the past. And I think that's where they're parking now, to leave the customer parking open in the front and in the back. And just to comment to the propane tank, I don't think it'd work in the back just because they've got to get delivery trucks down that lane, unload them, put them in the warehouse. And I think if we had a propane tank there in the middle of the parking lot at the edge of the building, I think it'd be more cumbersome than where it's at now, just for movement of material. And like I say, the delivery trucks want to go down that lane straight, unload, and go straight out the back instead of trying to make that turn. That's what we proposed anyway. I don't know if angled parking along that west side would even be helpful for backing out if we had them angled towards the the oncoming traffic where you backed out, you could kind of see better. I don't know if that's an option.
might encourage people not to back out the wrong way, right, and cross traffic.
Right.
Discussed doing that all across town.
Yeah, I do other places in town.
That would be good. I think you're gonna lose at least one spot by angling it, because it does take more space when you go diagonal instead of straight on. But
Yeah.
it would, in my opinion, to be a better option.
I agree with that. I think I'm also seeing that if you don't have the propane tank there now and you can move it in the future, would you be able to move it up to where that overhead power pole is? You've got a gap in the parking between space 1 and 2 anyway, where the overhead power pole is. Maybe put the tank behind that and kind of allow for another barrier so somebody doesn't hit the power pole.
I know the power pole has like a guide wire that comes down, takes up some of that space. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at some pictures, but I know there's a guide wire there. It could go on the inside of that, on the parking lot side, maybe. But again, we'd have to protect it pretty good being there.
Yeah, I think having the diagonal parking, and then also you need to have a way for people to walk from those 5 spaces in the back all the way up to the front. Because if those 5 spaces are supposed to be included in the retail parking allowance, they need to be able to get there. And against traffic on that one way, maybe, but going between the front of a truck and the ice that's slid off the building, that's going to be a tight squeeze. So then you're basically walking down the middle of Jackson Avenue, which nobody's going to want to do.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that. I mean, if we angled them, we would actually gain some room for that sidewalk. If they were angled, and we could get a sidewalk down the building, and then we could put snow retention on the building to hold the snow while it melts off. I know that, I don't think that building has gutter, so we'd have to put gutter along that side, so the water would go underneath the sidewalk and out into the drainage, along the street. And then put snow retention on the roof to hold snow and ice.
I don't know if the plan has this much detail, but was the vision to also put some sort of parking curbs in there? Just I'm thinking, if you don't have a way to actually physically stop the vehicle, a lot of people will back up more or nose in closer, even if there's a sidewalk there. It seems like all the time there's theoretically a sidewalk, but you can't actually walk on it if vehicles can just roll forward.
No, we definitely do parking bumpers in all stalls, and we do that a lot on the standard plumbings because you've got a lot of plumbers or people with like tool racks and their pipes hanging out 4 or 5 feet, and they run it into the building. So yeah, we always put parking bumpers to keep those vehicles away. And we can show that on the plan if we need to.
Yeah, maybe if you can't move the propane tank behind the power pole, maybe even moving it up front to space 13 or space 4 or 5, I'm not sure, but then you could get a few more diagonal spots up along that west side.
See, I'd rather see it in 8 or 9. I don't love that it'd be right at the front of the building on Pine Street.
I don't think the owner wants it in front of the building either. And again, this is, I mean, I can just tell the owner if the propane tanks is going to be too much of an issue, we'll just get rid of it. I mean, he was just hoping to bring it back for customers, but we don't want it to smash the project for sure.
So Commissioner Boyce, when you said 8 or 9, you're talking the ones on the northwest side of the building.
Yes, northwest.
9 in the front of the building.
Correct. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the numbers duplicate. Yeah, I mean that northwest corner where it could still be, close enough to the building or sheltered enough by the building that it's not going to interfere with your delivery trucks, but it's taking space that's less desirable to park in than what used to be. I just would like to see since this is really tight and, you know, I'll be completely honest, if I'm coming to your store, I'm not going to park anywhere from halfway back on your building to the back end. I think those are great places to encourage employees to park, especially if the employees can get in a back door. But as a person potentially coming with my family to go look at refrigerators or something, I'm not going to traipse my kids all the way around and behind all this traffic and even, you know, to walk that distance. If there's not an option there, I'm going to park next door. Or people are going to parallel park on Pine Street and walk in.
Well, what I think happens in practice is people that park on Jackson, it's like when you have a trailer, like, right, you're selling your boat to Willow Lake or a horse trailer.
Mm-hmm.
That is how that parking ends up being used now.
True.
So it ends up being 1 or 2 spots.
Mhm.
And honestly, you know, most of the time, I really don't think this is going to be an issue because unless you were having like an event or something, or, you know, a special sale of some sort that where everybody had to be there at a certain time, I really don't think this is going to be a problem anyway. I think it's, you know, yeah, if you were in a bit busier town, I could see a store this size needing this many spots, but I think most of the time it's really not going to be an issue.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I guess my biggest thing is just having a sidewalk of some kind along the west side. And I think it should extend all the way up to the proposed building as well, because you have 4 spaces in there that are supposed to be included in that retail number, right?
Because the others are. Where is the entrance on that proposed building in the back? Where is the entrance for people who will be living there?
It's on the north side.
It looks like those are stairs up against the building on the north side. Is that correct?
Correct.
No back out parking is proposed onto Hoback Street.
No.
Okay.
I believe that's.
No parking at all along there.
Okay.
That's right of way parking existing. I think you could probably fit a couple parallel parking spaces. The town, if this parking waiver were to be granted in this building permit, town staff, they've provided their lease of how they would try to, you know, enforce and help their residents have reserved parking. We would try to do so, but that on-street parking there would just be treated like any other on-street parking in Pinedale. It gets really busy. Usually going to park 3 blocks around American Legion is no parking spaces.
Well, and to be honest, that's when this other parking at the north end of the building is going to get used. Is there, so with the plan for this being employee housing, is there anything, maybe Mr. Pierce, you can answer this. Would this qualify for space to be used for short-term rental?
So it could certainly be used for hotel motel. This is commercial.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I don't know if it can, according to 475-110, I believe it is restricted. It shall not comprise hotel or motel uses where lodging is offered for compensation for weekly or daily rental dwelling units.
That's under the CEP.
That is under, yeah.
Yeah, so under the C1 zoning, they know it would not be able to be used as hotel motel. It could be used as an allowance. That's where I would have to, and I don't even know how to deal with that, right? But as far as the mixed use residential commercial as part of the CEP, no, it would not be able to be used as short-term rental.
Okay, because I think that's a whole different beast if it's allowable for that. Because I mean, it's a great, I fully support the idea of having employee housing, but what if you don't have employees that need housing? And, and that place is just going to sit empty. So then what's going to happen with that? And that's why I asked that question, because I mean, to me, it could be opened up for other rental, to whoever in the town, but I would have to think differently about it if it was going to be more traffic and coming and going, and maybe not understanding where the designated parking for these spots is. And I mean, not that I would necessarily be a no vote on that either. I just would want to account for that if that is a possibility.
In my interpretation of the code of the CUP, that it has to be used for residential with this monthly rental.
Yeah, the owner's plans are to have apartments there and the convenience for employees. If there's no employees, he'll rent it out to whoever, but it won't be a short-term rental. There'll be apartments.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because it's everybody that comes before us, there's a plan, but then things change, things get sold, what happens down the road? And so that's why I wanted that covered as well, because while your intention is to use it for employee housing, which I applaud, that might not be the next person's intention. So
I would certainly say you can highlight that in the conditions.
Okay. Okay. That would be my preference personally, but let y'all talk.
Madam Chair, I know it's quite the conversation. Under D1 is the hearing. You guys can do this whichever order you want, but the D1 purpose is only the mixed use of residential commercial. D2 public hearing is the special development plan. And then the new business is the parking waiver. Those are the three approvals or considerations we're looking through. And it's, what was the whole building permit? That's that parking waiver is part of the building permit package.
Yeah, so the third one, we need to weigh in on 4 items. Is that correct?
And
Kind of.
the one that P&Z specifically is called out on is
Parking.
the parking waiver.
Okay.
And so it just says the parking waiver is submitted with the building permit. And when we get a building permit, that comes with water and sewer and right of way and everything, like all of those go at once. And so we would have that thing considered. And obviously they can't get their building permit without that parking waiver. And at least from my interpretation.
Okay. All right, I guess, is there any further discussion or questions before we start trying to hammer out some motions on these 3 issues? And I'm inclined to go in order D1, D2, and then E1, kind of go from the least complex to most complex. Okay.
I just wanted to confirm with staff. I know there was an issue called out about approval from the state fire marshal, and I wanted to see if that had been resolved or if we would need to include anything in a recommendation about it being contingent on that issue being resolved.
I would, that's a great point, Commissioner Lutz. I'd have to ask Mr. Spencer if they have received it. I know they were kind of going back and forth. I've written some like will serve letters for DEQ and some different things as they've been ironing out the stuff that they need. We have enough water capacity because the back building is a fire sprinkler building. So it's a big connection to the main. And so there are some certain things that they have to go get DEQ permit. But on the state fire marshal side, what I have typically done with the town is we make all vertical construction contingent upon the receipt of that fire marshal approval. And we go ahead and issue our building permit, and that sometimes it helps the fire marshal because they can see that it has local approval of local codes, and they focus on the building. The building itself is their wheelhouse, their jurisdiction. We don't really do the building review. So I would ask that we do that on item E1 as part of the E1 recommendation, is that the building permit is just no vertical construction contingent upon receiving that fire marshal approval.
So we have that approval already.
Okay. I'll just need a copy of it when you guys get it. Just send it over. And I'll be honest, we have so many files on this. it perhaps I have it, but I couldn't find it the other day, so.
And then I thought maybe too, I'd just see if the consensus is, it sounds like all of us on the commission are in agreement that there ought to be a sidewalk, which really to service the entrance to the residential units would have to go along the full western and northern sides of the buildings. We didn't specifically discuss it, but I assume that would also entail a marked crosswalk across the traffic flow area between the buildings, just to ensure that customers know that's where they're supposed to walk and cars know that that's where they can expect to find people walking. We talked about some sort of measures to mitigate snow and ice on the sidewalks. And then we talked about parking bumpers to make sure vehicles don't encroach on the sidewalks. Wasn't sure if I was missing anything, but that's just kind of what I had jotted down as we were going.
I think you got it. Just to note though, there already is a sidewalk on the north side. It's a raised sidewalk for about half of the lot, and then it's at grade. So I think you wouldn't need to add another sidewalk along the north side of the proposed building, just tie in the west sidewalk to that existing.
I thought he was talking about the north end of the existing building.
Are you talking about the north end of the existing building?
Actually, I wasn't, and I had missed the sidewalk that's existing. But I think Judy's point is correct. If we want a safe place for people to walk from those spots 14 through 21, there ought to be some sort of sidewalk there on the north side of the existing building.
So Commissioner Lutz, is that what you were trying to describe as this portion here? I mean, I know it's just one rectangle, but that's all I can draw.
Yes, as far as the west side, although it sounds like it might actually be immediately adjacent to the buildings as opposed to a little bit separated. Yeah. And then also I think what Judy just pointed out would be between the existing building and those parking spots 14 through 21 on the north side of the existing building.
Oh, I understand. I was opening this up. So not this sidewalk that's already existing on the north side of the property.
But the one that would be between the buildings in front of the parking.
This area here.
Yes. And I also question how you're going to have a sidewalk and a crosswalk when that diagonal piece is going to sit on top of it where it would need to be.
I think they probably have to lose that spot. We probably go down to 36, which would still meet the code requirements.
I definitely like a diagonal parking on Jackson better than what this is, because even in the sketch plan, there's a picture of a truck. But if you're driving a car, you've got to back out before you can see past the truck. And so I think having the diagonal is going to be much safer.
I agree. I'd really like to see that as well. Diagonal parking.
It's also easier to park in if you're driving a longer vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And then how would they indicate that when the surface is going to be gravel? So I don't think they'll be painting lines.
That's all gonna be paved.
Oh, it will be paved. Okay.
So to back up 1 year, they went to the town council for an encroachment agreement to pave this section of the road.
Okay.
And to put their stormwater retention basin in the town right away. The town council allowed them they passed an encroachment agreement allowing the asphalt, but asked that the storm retention be fully contained on site. And so in these plans, you'll see that storm retention is fully contained on private property. And so they do intend to pave the whole area.
Okay, that's excellent.
Yeah. I think overall, the whole plan is going to be an improvement.
Mhm.
Right. Well, maybe we could tackle item D1, which is the conditional use application. And I would just say, I really am inclined to support this. I really like it. I love the mixed residential, with commercial. I think that's a wonderful answer to easing our housing affordability problems. So I'm excited about this part.
I would agree.
And it's also something that's laid out, I think, really clearly in our code. Code 475-110. This seems like exactly the sort of project that fits those requirements. I guess 475-109 and 110.
Any other comments, or are we open to a motion?
I think we're open to a motion on this one, and then we can also have further discussion on the other two pieces of it when we get to D2 and E1.
Okay. I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for mixed rental residential use at 777 West Pine Street pursuant to section 475-110 and section 160-22.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion for that motion?
Do we need any stipulations on that, conditions?
Do we have any conditions?
Well,
Like-
the parking stuff is going to be with the plan, the development plan.
Right, but the approval of the fire.
Fire marshal, we said it with E1.
No, we're gonna, do fire marshal with building permit.
Or D1, okay. Do we need, let's see, this is just mixed use, okay.
So just the idea of having apartments on top of the storage.
Yeah, without even addressing really most of the things that we've discussed.
Is it necessary to add the condition that they're not going to be used for nightly or weekly rentals?
It's already conditions spelled out in the CUP. So, I mean, if you want to add emphasis, perhaps, so that someone doesn't come down the road and say, we're going to use these 3 units, like
Say it's not.
this conditional use is for the residential use of these 3 facilities. I think there's nothing wrong with emphasizing this. And the only reason I say that is because hotel motel is an allowed use inside of commercial zone. That's not what you're approving here.
Mixed use.
It'd be mixed use. And so I feel like if someone tried to convert it to hotel motel as an allowed use, it'd be multiple uses in multiple buildings. I think that'd be a new special development plan that would come back to this board. I feel like that's how we would have to handle it as staff, is something like that. Or if someone wanted to open 3 Airbnbs on the top of it or whatever the case may be. I think it would have to come back because I don't think that was spelled out, but I don't think the emphasis would hurt. So.
Yeah, I think we'd be open to an amendment.
Okay. Oh, sorry,
Or condition.
At the end of that motion, can I add subject to the following condition? The residential unit or weekly rentals and shall not function as hotel or motel uses.
I will second that.
Just some discussion on the amendment. I don't have any great disagreement with it. I'm a little reluctant because I think that sometimes if we try and duplicate things that are already in the code, it can lead to problems in two ways. So one is there could be some sort of argument if there's anything that's remotely ambiguous that we didn't specifically add on as an exclusion, that we think is already excluded by the code, but someone else disagrees. Well, you took the extra step of calling out short-term rentals, but not this other thing. And then number two, if there's just any sort of discrepancy between the language in the CUP and the language in code, it's going to create ambiguity and potential enforcement problems. If we're certain enough that the code already forbids it, just for that reason, I kind of have a general philosophical opposition to trying to duplicate what's already in code elsewhere. But I can understand that maybe it's a particular concern and that's what's motivating it. So I can see it going either way, but I would probably oppose the amendment.
Michael, is the problem that we're calling it a condition rather than emphasizing that that's the case, where it wouldn't have to be necessarily an added provision. It would just be noting that we see that this, because this is just a recommendation to town council. So making an emphasis on it to me is just like reminding council that this is our interpretation of that, because Ed will be at that meeting and then we can get clarification from Ed as to whether that's a correct interpretation.
And that's certainly what I would do too, is I'll take this where Ed is this where does Airbnb short-term rentals apply into this interpretation of mixed-use residential commercial? Because if there is a gap there, because that has been a continuous gray area for us as staff of what is commercial and what is a short-term rental, and the state fire marshal has not helped us that. Like, it has been very challenging.
Okay.
And so I can take that to Ed and get his interpretation prior to the council meeting based on this discussion. And hopefully when the council passes it, they have a very clear and finite definition from Ed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Judy, that maybe it could be rephrased just as a recommendation for town council to look further into that issue. And one wrinkle I thought of, I may be recalling the STR regulation incorrectly, but I think a certain number of STRs on a single site are deemed a hotel motel, which could further muddy the waters if hotel motel is a permissible use. So I would certainly favor looking into it more, but I'd just be a little cautious about recommending it as an express sort of fully formed condition for the CUP at this time.
All right, do we have a consensus?
Well, if that was a motion, it's going to have to not be
Yeah. Should we vote that motion down? And
We can withdraw the motion. So,
Okay,
So the amendment.
yeah.
withdraw the amendment and
I withdraw the amendment.
Just withdraw the whole thing and make it.
start over. That would be clearer, I
I withdraw the whole thing.
think.
no, yeah, hit us with the good parts.
With the new one, okay. I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for mixed rental residential use at 777 West Pine Street pursuant to sections 475-110 and section 160-22.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Did we want to tack on something about also recommending that town council look into the STR issue further, or the fact that, Judy obviously knows about it, is that enough without
I know about
incorporating it?
How about if we just instruct Abe to
Yeah.
look into that rather than.
Consider
making it-
staff. We'll try.
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. I think that concludes our discussion. So we have a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. All right, so that brings us to item D2, which is the special development plan. According to section 160-24 of our town code. And this is where we address the multiple structures permitted on the same lot.
And I feel this would be an appropriate place to discuss about some of your parking ideas, traffic flow, all of those things that you guys have discussed in this meeting to this point.
Yeah, I'm okay with the number of spaces as is. I would like to have the parking along Jackson Avenue be angled. And I would like to have a sidewalk connect from Pine Street to Hoback Street on the existing sidewalks. And that sidewalk should be the minimum town standard width. And there should be some kind of snow retention system installed on the roof of the existing building to keep it from building up. In addition to that sidewalk, Judy talked about the on the north side of that existing building to service, looks like parking spaces 14 through 21. So I think that.
Which ones are 14 through 21? Is that the ones on the north side of the existing building?
Yes,
Yes, that's right.
you want to address the,
I don't know if we can get a sidewalk in that area. Man, that's gonna encroach into that driveway, like the one-way drive. It's gonna be really tight. I'm a little concerned about that one. I'm fine with the sidewalk down the west side and all the way to the north side of the apartments for those people to be able to go back and forth. But I don't know if we can get a sidewalk on that north side to push that parking out another 5 feet. That would be beyond the center of that lane.
I think it's less of a problem on this end because I don't see anybody other than employees parking on that side.
Yeah.
Well, the apartments are going to park there.
Right, but they're not going to be going around the building to the front. They're going to be going into that second building.
Right,
So
but
a sidewalk's not going to matter to them.
well, Michael had mentioned that he would like to see a sidewalk across there going down the west side of the apartment so those people can walk from there down the west side of the apartment building to the front. So as long as we're okay with that, those apartment people, walking between their car and across that drive without an accessible route, then that's fine. But we were talking about having an accessible route for people to walk from their vehicle safely across the building and then over to the apartments. I don't see how we can do that with the sidewalk because it's going to encroach into the drive area. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, yes, it does make sense.
Okay.
And I think we're all in agreement that it's not as much of a big deal because there's not going to be a lot of people driving through that one way. Right. And
parking there that are coming to the front.
So really, in my opinion, the biggest issue is just being able to walk from Hoback Street along the west side to Pine Street, and anybody who parks along that can hop on that sidewalk and get to the front of the building or to the back, whatever.
Okay.
And having those be diagonal, do what you want with the propane tank, I suppose, but it'd probably be useful to move it. That's where I'm at.
Okay. No, that works for me. I mean, I'm fine with that. We can hopefully replace that that one spot on the end that the sidewalk's gonna go through, maybe if we move the propane tank, we can add another 2 stalls there or 1 stall, angled parking.
Something that we haven't talked about yet, but there is a gap between the back of the sidewalk on Hoback Street and the property line, and also where the building is there. That is just unlandscaped area right now, and in the past, that's where U-Haul trailers got backed up to. I think Hoback Street. Yep. So if you look at the street view there, they've got U-Haul trailers backed up across the sidewalk. I think it's kind of a mess when people try to drive over a high back curb and just park on the landscaping. So it would be nice if that was prevented in some way, just to know that that's not part of the plan.
The building's gonna be there though, right? So
Yeah.
It's not. There's a gap between the property line and the sidewalk.
I think we would landscape that area. That's the city right away, right?
Yes.
And we can landscape that area, or do we need some special permission to
No,
landscape the city right away? Or are we good?
We just put it in that same encroachment agreement with all your pavement and everything you're doing, so.
Okay,
Typically, I've not seen the town council usually they just, we just ask for certain things like no boulders, no pavers, because in the event that we need to pile snow somewhere and that's where we pile it, we don't want to be damaging snow plows or something like that. But I don't think we're going to be piling snow there, but we would still enforce the same actions or ask for the same, we'd like to review the plans before you put it in.
would it be okay to xeriscape that, like gravel and colored gravel and stuff and some shrubbery or something, or are you looking for actual grass?
Whatever your guys' preference, we have some rules on rock, just so you know,
Okay,
that's low grade, because we move it. It moves easy under a pile of snow. So,
gotcha.
but yeah, landscape would be fine.
I don't think we have the authority to tell you what kind of landscaping to put there, right? It's just
Right away we do.
in the right of way you do. Well,
Okay.
I guess my point is just it's not helpful when people drive up a high back curb and park into the landscaping out of convenience, and we do have that right across the street from town hall here.
Gotcha.
And so that's what I would like to try to prevent in this situation.
Oh, you're
Okay.
thinking where people would pull in and then back out onto Hoback?
Just parking on the landscaping right there.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be a problem anymore. I think before, maybe when they were doing U-Hauls with A to Z lumber, I guess that's the only place they could park, but that's all gonna be gone now. They're not doing U-Haul out of there anymore.
Mhm.
So,
So the sidewalk though, that's an existing sidewalk at the edge of the street.
yeah,
So that, it seems like that's gonna, especially once there's a building there, it would seem like why would somebody intentionally hop the
Yeah.
sidewalk?
yeah, because it's gonna be the front of the apartment building.
See, the building will be set back to.
I know, but would you go park in somebody's front yard with your car?
I mean, music in the park, anything goes.
Yeah, and especially, I think it just needs to be very clear to especially the people who are going to be living in these units that that's not an appropriate place to park, because once one person does it, then a lot of people will do it.
See, the half of that sidewalk is raised, and half of it is a curb
That
cut.
is lower, you're right.
And so, I mean,
Almost invites
it
it.
just needs to be designed, I think. I think my point is it needs to be designed for either no parking or move the building and do parking, right? Either way. But it's just kind of left out of the design right now.
Yeah, because the neighboring property has parking
Mhm.
facing Hoback, and that seems to work nice for them.
And that's also paved though, so. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry to bring something up last minute, but that's something I was just thinking of.
That's all right.
Is there space for employees to park on that side? Where you're gonna have the entrance on that side, wouldn't it make more sense to have the employees that live there park closer to their door?
So the right of way cannot be used for residential parking purposes specifically by the town code, and specifically even in the parking waiver. It says a parking waiver can be considered for commercial, industrial, only, not residential spaces.
Okay, so that's why it's okay on Jackson, but not okay on Hoback.
That's why they have them reserved between the two buildings. That's why
Yeah.
there's spaces between the two buildings, because the code is specific to residential, not being in the right of way.
Not to like encourage misbehavior or anything, but we have granted this on a recent sixplex.
With a waiver, or that was not a waiver, that was a variance request
Right,
for that. Back out parking fully contained on their property. It was still fully contained parking within their private property, but allowed back out onto the right of way. Because that's spelled out before.
okay, because, so that the parking is on their property, it's not in the right of way, okay. How does, the cozy cabins next door get away with that?
Well, we have battles all the time about they cannot actually mark them as cozy cabin only parking because they're fully contained in the right of way. And so they have an encroachment agreement that allowed them to pave that, and they chose to pave that, but they are not allowed to hang signs. And we've actually had several back and forth that said like, yeah, take the sign down. We have allowed them during like music in the park to put cones out and signs up temporarily because they're trying to run a business, and all of a sudden there's 1,000 people in American Legion Park.
Mhm.
And so we have allowed them to try to protect their spaces for their tenants a little bit, but
Well, it doesn't look like they've got anywhere else that people could park in that one, and it's, I don't know, it just brings a question of like, we allow it right next door, so. And in the interest of serving the needs of American Legion Park events, it might be, helpful to have parking on that side as well. Not trying to, stir the pot, but.
It's just the way the code's written.
I know.
So Cozy Cabins has been there for a long time, and so that's
Not predating the code though.
probably in 2006 or so.
Yeah.
I would guess on Cozy Cabins.
Trust me, we wanted to put parking on the north side of the building, but it just didn't work with the code.
Yeah, well, I'm sympathetic to your concern. I think that the residents are gonna park on that side anyway, even if it's parallel.
I think they will, or their guests, at
Mhm.
least, people visiting the residences. Because that's a really nice wide street you can park on both sides.
I guess,
Parallel.
sorry, maybe the question is, would it be worth encouraging the applicant to try to get a variance? Or, I mean, we can only kind of approve or deny what's in front of us. So I think it sounds like a variance and parking on the north side might be ideal. But it seems to me like it's just not probably something we can really implement unless the applicant wants to kind of start over and use that process instead.
We were told a variance would probably not go through, so that's why we didn't go down that road. I've got an email saying that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm the one that told you that. Like, I
Yep.
don't know if it goes through.
Well, and that's,
So-
it is two different places, here we're talking about it somewhat favorably, but I couldn't guarantee what's gonna happen at council.
Right.
Well, maybe with that in mind, I'll move that we approve or recommend to town council approval of the special development plan with the following conditions. Number one, that the parking on Jackson Street be changed to angled parking. Number two, that there be a sidewalk along the western side of both the existing and the proposed new building. Number three, that there be a crosswalk connecting the sidewalk on the western side of the two buildings. Number four, that adequate provisions be made to prevent snow and ice from obstructing the sidewalks. So specifically, snow retention and gutters. And number five, that parking bumpers be installed and noted on the plans to ensure that vehicles don't encroach on the sidewalks. And last, that the applicant consider but need not necessarily move the LP tank if that would aid in ensuring safe flow for pedestrians.
That works for me.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion and the 6 recommendations?
Will the fire marshal, will emergency vehicle access be reviewed and approved? Like, along with the fire marshal
He
review?
just does the building, and gets referred to Chief Cooper, and what Chief Cooper looks at is separation between buildings,
Okay,
the existence of a fire sprinkler system or not, and then how close he can get his trucks. And because this is abutted to 2 sides and then has a driveway around all 4 sides, I
Okay,
know
right.
Chief Cooper will have any hesitations. I mean, he doesn't love high density, but that's like the fight between the town and the fire chief, and I think that's okay. I think that fight's gonna last forever a little bit, but there's nothing here from my experience with Chief Cooper, and I feel like we even have probably conferred with Chief Cooper. This project's been pretty long, and I don't remember him having issues with it, so.
Okay. Great, that was just my final question.
all right. Any further discussion of the motion?
I think just maybe to add a little bit to it, that the sidewalk needs to be town standard and it should connect to Hoback Street existing sidewalk and to Pine Street existing sidewalk.
Are you talking about where out on Pine Street would you want it to connect? It's already connected at the corner.
There's a kind of a strip of dirt where some utilities are, but so it'd be another crosswalk type situation across that drive lane and then across that strip of dirt to the existing sidewalk.
So there's landscaping there, though. There's a tree or something, a couple of trees maybe.
Yeah, there's that's where that power pole and guide wire is. I
just shared my screen. I think what Ryan is discussing is there need to be something that gets them with this, this last little bit to the existing ADA side.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously this area.
Yeah.
Works. However, it tied together with east to the north.
I'm sorry, how might that be handled? I'm looking like at the Google Street View. That does look tricky. I don't know if you can do the Google Street View of that corner, but there's a lot going on.
So do you see the red paint on that existing sidewalk?
Mhm.
That's where you tie in and then you go on the west side of the power pole. And then it would angle towards the corner of the existing building as a crosswalk,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Well, honestly, it's gonna be an improvement over what's in that area anyway, because like the other side doesn't have a true sidewalk either.
Yeah,
So it'll be nice for anybody who happens to be walking even through the area, not necessarily to the business, so.
yeah, especially when the street ties into a bike path.
Mhm.
It's nice to have the pedestrian connectivity.
Yeah,
Can you do can you do a pedestrian sidewalk under a guide wire? Or are you talking about to the west of that pole?
West of the pole, but
West of the
You can
pole,
go-
okay.
West of the pole, you certainly can put them under a guide wire. It just has to have a certain clearance, so that would just have to be checked. Either one would be. Seems like it would come out here and pay for cost.
But does that become a public right away? I mean, we're tying to a public sidewalk that's going to be tied to a private sidewalk. How does that work?
well, in my mind, because you're using the public right of way for parking and in and out there, that's kind of where the town would have built a sidewalk if it wasn't going to be used as parking. So we're
Okay.
essentially moving that sidewalk closer to your building. It is still your private property, but I would assume you wouldn't put a no trespassing sign on it.
Yeah, I don't see why we would, but I was just curious how that worked.
Like this, we've actually even gone as far as doing public access easements along the sidewalk to allow the public to use them. That's what we did on that variance for Mr. Goodrich because he moved the public sidewalk like 20 feet onto his property to allow that parking, because we didn't want the sidewalk behind his parking. And so we did do that. In this area, I feel like it's probably a little less.
Probably don't get a lot of traffic walking, like a lot of pedestrian traffic down Jackson.
If it's to the north, the Pinedale pathway system is like another block to the north.
but it could be more than you think, just because it does tie in with the pathway on Jackson farther to the north. I don't know, as somebody who does a lot of walking in town, I can say it's nice to find a sidewalk to use where you don't have to be on the street. And so I could see using this.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to be like, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think it's just people walking by. At least I can't foresee anything that would be nefarious about it.
So we do have a motion on the table. That was just my amendment to that.
Yes, so that brings us to kind of 6 or 7 recommendations.
So if that's an actual amendment, we probably need a second on the amendment and then vote on the amendment and then the full motion. Is that?
Okay.
I would second the amendment.
Okay, our amendment has been seconded. Let's have a vote. We'll have a vote on the amendment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The amendment passes. And so we are considering a recommendation to approve the special development plan with a series of recommendations to the town council. Are we all ready to move forward to a vote? All right, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, that'll pass 5-0. And now this brings us into the fun stuff, which is primarily a parking waiver that we will focus on as part of E1 that will tie into the building permit, water and sewer, and right-of-way excavation permit. And Abe did remind us that that this will be contingent on fire marshal approval, which has been attained by the applicant. So now I guess we can get further into the parking if we choose to. Is there any discussion or questions from the board?
I feel like we've covered everything that we were concerned about within our other discussion, so.
So the waiver now is just that we're allowing less than the required number of spots.
Yep. And if you look in your packet, you will see that they did kind of, the code requires certain information to be provided, how many spaces are within X distance, how many are used by other businesses, what times are they used. And there is quite a bit of right of way available for parking. Should someone want to go to standard plumbing and these parking areas are full, I do think within a block of this area, there's a downtown parking lot. There's other areas that I think will likely be usable. I do think the applicant needs to be aware that music in the park and those types of things are going to be a bit of an issue, and the enforcement of no parking and that whole private public gets a little abused in the area. And the town has a really hard time enforcing it because it includes a piece of the right of way. We can't allow people to say you can't park here because it is public right of way. And even though a piece of it is private now, obviously they can put a cone at their private property line and mark people off. And that would certainly be their right by law to do so. And other than that, I think the parking waiver makes a lot of sense. I think for a good business to have success in a small town, the more that we can all intermingle with other businesses and parking and people walking, the better chance it has to be successful. So I think the parking waiver with the other two things passed is pretty straightforward. And I think they've supplied the information they need.
I do think it helps too to have the parking between the buildings that's got the designated reserved. Hopefully that will be honored by people, though you can't ever predict what people will do. But at least there's a better chance that somebody like coming home during an event would have a place to park. So I think it's probably the best we're going to get as far as a good compromise.
Would agree if this is what it takes to move this project forward. I really like it. Would anyone like to make a motion? I guess you really just need a recommendation from us on the parking waiver.
I think the proper motion, since it's part of the building permit, would be a recommendation of approval of the building permit, including a recommendation of acceptance of the parking waiver pursuant to that portion of code, and that building permit conditioned upon the acceptance of the state fire marshal for vertical construction. I think that's probably the right way to do it. The way it's packaged in the code is that parking waiver will be considered with the building permit. So I think that's the best way to move forward.
I can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of item E1, the standard plumbing building permit, considering the parking that we discussed in item D2, and also considering pending approval of the state fire marshal's office.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And I guess if there's any further comments from the public. I'm hearing no discussion. We'll move it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Well, thank you to our applicant and our staff for all the footwork on this over the past year.
Yep. So, Madam Chair, if I can hijack it for a second, just to give the applicant and the public an opportunity to understand what the next steps are. These recommendations will go to the Pinedale Town Council on March 9th. That meeting is scheduled for 5 o'clock here at the Town Hall, 205 Entertainment Lane. All three of these items will be considered during that, as well as the interior installation of that water meters. That is a separate waiver from the code. It's for Town Council. So those 4 items will go to Town Council, and if approved, then as soon as council, or as staff will work with the applicant to iron out all the final fees and all those, and we will submit, if approved, all the paperwork. They should be able to break ground, anytime thereafter, if you will. Obviously, the town has a no dig date in until April 15th, so anything in the right of way has to wait for construction after April 15th or until that no dig is lifted. But private property construction can begin at any time. So that's kind of a look at if the public or anybody or the applicant. I would recommend you guys be present for that meeting on Monday night, but these recommendations will be forwarded accordingly.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right. That was great. That will bring us to item F1, the PUDs. Unfortunately, our workshop last month was not held. So I guess tonight, are we wanting to further that discussion or schedule another workshop in the coming month? And I think, Chelsea, there was a discussion of pushing this to April. Is that correct? Discussion by email?
Yes, it is. You guys wish to do that final?
No, that's just when it could be a public hearing. We could have a public hearing at the meeting in April.
Okay.
That can happen.
You have other things coming up in April as well?
Got one item for public hearing in April. It is a subdivision application. I believe that is the goal. The applicant is, I think it will happen. It's a small subdivision south of town. Actually, Mr. Wells is the agent on the application. So I could ask him, are we going to have a public hearing?
I don't know. I'll wait we'll try to get it turned in by Wednesday. So.
Okay.
No pressure.
I got my work to do.
So, I mean, we're planning for an April public hearing anyway. We can certainly tag the zone and everything to that. What time to get that all done? Even if you guys schedule a workshop tonight. What had happened last time is we had a miscommunication out on it. This is my fault as the director of public works. We asked for an advertisement to be posted on the public hearing. I did not follow up to see if it got published. And then the day the hearing came and said, did it get published? And it was not published. And we had a communication drop. I will more our works director, and we will hopefully not allow that to happen. The mayor has asked when we follow special meetings as a board that we follow the same protocol that the council would follow, just for the standpoint of transparency to the public. So he's asked that we maintain at least 24 hours of public notification for special meetings, even if it's a workshop action. And so we can certainly schedule that as, or you guys can work on it tonight, or we can schedule that workshop for any time. I just need to make sure I get that legal advertisement down. So I'm sorry, and I apologize for our internal mishap. So.
You're forgiven, in my opinion. I think it's kind of you to take that. Miscommunication happens, right? So thank you for saying that, but I don't hold you personally responsible for it.
So now it looks like maybe we have a March 20th deadline to have our final draft ready in order to have a final public hearing April 6th. So maybe we need to get our work done as a board by March 20th. Is that what I'm understanding?
I would request if it could be by me.
Okay, of course.
It would just help me get my information to council. We try to publish by the Friday ahead of time. We try to publish by noon. We don't always make that happen, but that is always the goal.
Well, do you guys want to dive in tonight or set up a workshop?
I think setting up a workshop would be a great idea. I know where we left it off last time, I had some task items to do and I have not gotten to those. So it would be helpful to me to understand what tasks I need to do and everybody else needs to do. Where are we at? It's been a minute.
You want to review on what we said last time?
So what did we assign, and where?
Sure.
I know we're trying to get a rough draft for the workshop to basically read through it, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we can talk through what we had said last time, but if you go and listen to that, the very end of that meeting, we talked it out. I think I listed a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty clear in that.
Okay.
If you want to look there, but we can also look at, I think Monica made a list for us in an email.
Yeah, Monica emailed us February 2nd.
Did she?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica.
For Ryan, it says research precedent and overall direction related to this section. Which section? Section 14 to section 16.
Gotcha.
Did others do what they were supposed to do? I did not.
I did not. And I wish I could say, oh, it's because I was supposed to integrate Ryan's items, but.
I did mine because I was.
Oh, man.
You know, I think I had two assignments, one of which is there was sort of a list of items to consider when determining if a PUD was appropriate. And I was to look through the town code and see if there was kind of a ready-made list elsewhere that we could just copy paste. Personally, I didn't find anything, but the town code is big enough I could have missed something. I did put in a comment identifying some of the analogous sections, and I thought the items we listed in our draft were consistent with what could be found elsewhere. But I just didn't see any other option that could strictly be copied and pasted. And then I know we kind of had some a pretty in-depth discussion about expiration. And I came down, I think, a little more on the side of wanting to avoid any sort of accidental default that would cause reversion, and probably give more generous amounts of time before expiration of either the, I guess, initial approval or completion of the project. So I wrote up an alternative proposal and put it into the Google Doc. Obviously, if a majority of the commission doesn't agree, we can just scrap that. But that sort of represented what I thought might be an alternative there. I'm trying to remember if I put it in a comment or actually in the text. Oh yeah, so it's there in the text. It looks like, because I wrote it up in a Word document. It's in a somewhat different font, but
Yeah. Do you see it there?
What page on is it on?
First page in the middle.
Yeah, I see.
One thing I do remember is we had a lengthy discussion about the end, where we're trying to figure out what is an appropriate allowance of change between the approved plan and the constructed plan. And so the reality is there needs to be some allowance in there. But I think, Abe, it would be really good to have your input on that from your perspective as an engineer, and also your perspective from approving plans, deeming them complete. And so the things like the building size, height, setbacks, distance between buildings, the orientation of the buildings. We talk numbers, detail on that. And I feel like we need to define that so that it's easy for staff to determine whether it's a yes or a no. But how we define that is kind of tricky. So
my initial shoot from the waist on this is I want to view PUD more similar to a preliminary plat acceptance, like a contract between a developer and the town, more so than necessarily a rezone. And the reason I say that is because there's going to be all these public hearings and all these processes to get to the acceptance of a PUD, and to make it worth it for a developer, they have to know that they can hopefully get through a PUD without a huge cost, and then they can get into the nitty gritty. And as the nitty gritty details require certain things to happen, I would like that contract to be like on the high end, we get to hear, and you have some obviously maybe some plus that you could work within, but all of the things that are considered at the PUD process, since this is like a rezone / subdivision, traffic and water and sewer, as long as we're staying within thresholds and we're staying within like zoning allowances, I would like them to be able to come forward when they get to preliminary plat, like we're meeting our contract, and we're not having to go through all of this process all over again because like we are within the band or below. Because I don't know what those would be, and so I'll give it some more thought, but I definitely don't want someone, because if they're going to lock themselves in, there's really no benefit of going through a PUD process, because they're going to have to spend a fortune to have a master plan, and beyond a master plan, they're going to have every building designed and everything designed. So there's going to have to be some reasonableness that they stay within the contract confines and can move forward with future phases, or else there's just really no incentive to do it.
So you're thinking like have it be much less specific on where everything's going to be within that development.
Yeah, they're gonna draw approximate lot lines in a PUD, and they're gonna say this is commercial, and maybe they're restricting it to 2-story commercial or something of that nature. But if they go from 10 commercial lots down to 9, or maybe they go from 10 to 11, is that reasonable based on the spacing, or is it the total square footage, or what is it that would allow it? Or it might be more appropriate to think of it in a residential term, because they might think the duplexes is a great idea. They go to build it and they're like, actually 3plexes, we really like this design and we really like this units and open space and all these things are still preserved, but we're going to put our lot lines differently to do so. And so I think there needs to be some flexibility, or else, they're thinking multifamily. So maybe it's, we make sure it's reserved as multifamily. The setbacks and those types of things, those change based on what they're going to want as, I don't think they're thinking that far ahead. They're not thinking this is the duplex I'm going to put on, this is the 4plex. They're thinking, 1,500 square foot units. That's kind of probably what their brain is focused on. 3-bedroom units, or, family units, or maybe they're thinking single units of like 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments, smaller. And so I think we got to think through it in a way that allows, I don't know if that's population or square footage or something that's like this. What are the things we care about? We have a lot enough. You looked at the water capacity. You looked at the sewer capacity. You looked at the traffic capacity, and we're staying confines of what we're trying to do, and the use. Like the neighbor knows what's going to be next to them. Is it going to be a multifamily, or is it going to be a commercial building? I think that's what's important. So we're trying to find.
Yes. The sticking point is that you're going to have a public hearing for the PUD, and they may promise open space to buffer from this, let's say the back side of Ridley's to the front side of the neighboring neighborhood, right? And if they promise buffering space there, then we allow changes to happen when it comes to development, then it doesn't end up happening, right? Or for example, I guess that's kind of the main thing, but you see what I'm saying? So if we have a public hearing and people are expecting the plan to look like this, the reality is it's going to be somewhat like that, but it's going to have to be actually designed and changed somewhat.
What I'm really worried about, what I think is going to dictate people a little bit, and I can use the Ridley's property as the best example of this, because I've seen what they have like in their mind, and I look at it, I'm like, I know how much groundwater is in that area of town, and I think someone's going to go in to do the civil design and their groundwater design, how they deal with that groundwater, they're like, oh man, we need storm retention basins, we need these things, and it's going to eat up more ground than they thought it was going to. And they're probably going to be going in the opposite direction. Like it's going to probably be a little less dense than they intended. But the best example, I think, like Mr. Goodrich, if he had done it, I mean, we went through how many public meetings about this little strip of R2A. Is that right? The neighbors on the east were concerned about the density of the apartment complex across the street from them. And certainly in that, you could reserve that space under a CUP or under a PUD of like this is single family housing, minimum 8,000 square foot lots, and it could be a duplex or it could be a whatever, but like it's limited and it would stay within those realms, like, you know, zoning realms. And so that would have been very helpful and would have put probably within the conditions of that public hearing process, instead of going back to meetings and all the possibilities, he probably could have said, I'm happy to restrict this front ADB as, you know, max duplex or whatever the case may be. And it would have been very simple process. But I also think that if he were to make that reservation and say 5 years from now, he says, I want to put single family homes there instead of a duplex, I feel like that flexibility should remain because it's lesser than that. I don't know how to define that. I'm gonna have to read through it and figure that out. But.
So yeah, just read through what we have for requirements shown on the plan, and then from those designs, that preliminary designs that are shown on the plan approved as the PUD, how much change is allowed till when they actually built, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the crux of where we're at. It's a difficult thing to answer.
And also, I mean, if a proposed change exceeds those limits, it just means that it has to go to town council, right? I mean, which does take some time and some town resources, but it's not like those thresholds mean there can't be a change. It just means it has to go back through the legislative process, and folks can voice their opposition if it kind of violates the original understanding or agreement that's the basis of the project. But, you know, presumably none of those neighbors would oppose switching to single family homes across the street from them.
Yeah, I think there just needs to be a limit of what contractually is allowed, and usually lesser, you know, because to go back through the PUD process would be quite the lift compared to going through like this massaging of final approval of this subdivision now that we have a PUD in place. And so I just, yeah, don't want to make someone go through a 3-month process and then a year down the road, they want to put single families in and they have to go back through the 3-month process.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I think something that you can help us with your expertise on that.
I guess, are there any parts of this, Brian, do you think we can tackle tonight, or do we need to go back and just reassign our homework and bring this back in a workshop?
I think that's probably the move. Reassign the homework, and I'll actually do my homework this time, and then we'll have a workshop.
I assume these homework, does everyone have the February 2nd email?
Yes.
Do these items stay the same or do we need to add anything? I guess it will add that Abe is going to get back to us on his thoughts on the change process.
Okay.
And Michael did his.
He gets a month off.
Yep.
You get a month off, Michael.
Gold star.
No, and then just schedule the workshop.
Okay, what are you guys thinking for a workshop? March, there's like March 16th, which is a Monday night. That might get us in here by Abe's March 18th deadline. I don't know how those Mondays work for everybody.
So it's got to be advertised, right? And how much time do we need?
That's 2 weeks. So it should be fine.
We need 24 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still gonna have to send out a separate hearing on, like, I'll have to send a newspaper article out on the 16th advertising the public hearing without having council approve. But I think that will be fine from my conversation with the council to date. So we'll go ahead and, that's just when I have to send it to the paper for it to make the 15-day deadline that it has to be publicly notified, because that has to be in the paper on the 19th. Sorry, it has to be published on the 19th, which will line us up for that April 6th meeting for public hearing.
So the 16th, Monday, the 16th.
You could go as late as the 23rd and still have 2 weeks.
I've had 15 days.
Okay, so you could go
So I've had 15 days from the date of publishing, so it has to go in the 19th paper.
I see what
So
you
I will send a public notification, like I will send that legal notification, there'll be a public hearing on PUDs on the 6th of April. I can send that on the 16th still. So I might have to send that prior to going to council, which is fine. But yeah, I need 24 hours for your guy. I have a separate legal notification that has to go on the town website. And then we call the newspaper so that the press wants to be present. It's advertised on our website and the press is notified of the special meeting 24 hours. Minimum.
Okay, so does Monday, March 16th work? And I know we talked about doing a lunchtime, like at 12 p.m. workshop.
I would rather have an evening one. It's very hard for me to take time from work.
Okay,
I'm not sure, but I think I have something planned for Monday night, the 16th. I'd feel more comfortable if we had it on Thursday, the 19th.
Abe needs it before then.
Oh.
Yep.
Or even Thursday, the 12th. Is okay with that?
yeah, how does Thursday the 12th work?
That would work.
If that's the only time we can do it, I can make it work. I'm going to be in Jackson all day.
I will too, that day, but coming back by.
I'm not even in this town, I'm in Cass.
Okay, that won't work then. I think he needs to be here.
I can make the 19th work. If you guys can pull off the 19th, I can pull off the 19th. When we come out of the 19th, I'll take that and shimmy that over to the clerk first thing on Friday. I'll have it reserved in the agenda and I can get it into the agenda still on Friday.
I mean, would it be better if we did lunchtime on the 19th?
No,
No.
Thursdays are hard for
Oh,
me
sorry.
Is there any lunch
anyway.
day that does work?
I could do a Friday in the daytime. I don't work on Friday, so I could do Friday during the day.
I could figure that out.
I'm apprehensive about having this stuff on a Friday
Yeah.
with schools out on Friday and everything. I think that's tougher for the public if anyone wants to be involved.
But it's just a workshop and we are going to have the public hearing. So it's not like, we're not making any final decisions or anything on that day.
We could schedule it for Monday, the 16th, and I may not be able to make it, but for now we can schedule it, and I'm not going to be offended if I can't be here. It'll be fine.
We will be.
I feel like it's your project.
This is the final public hearing, so if you get your homework done, I just need a document to take to council that I feel comprehensive enough that when we go to public hearing, we can iron out the details, and we're not workshopping the whole thing in the public hearing.
Right. So the goal for the workshop is to have a complete document and to read through it as a group and button it up for town council.
Yeah, we can still.
For our own public hearing.
We just can't be workshopping that whole document in public hearing. It just will never get done.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, can we tentatively do the 16th? I'll let you know if I can't be here.
Yeah, and then maybe we can choose a different day.
Why don't we do that now though, so that we know that as soon as you know if the 16th isn't going to work, we know we can switch it because they're also going to have to advertise.
Okay.
Yeah, so is everyone's second choice, Thursday, the 19th, 5 p.m.? Would that be our second?
Yeah.
Okay. So our first choice is Monday, March 16th, 5 p.m. in this room. Second choice, Thursday, the 19th.
Right.
Monday, March 16th. Second choice, Thursday, March 19th at 5 p.m. again?
5 p.m. And then, and I think our deadline for getting our homework done would be then 5 p.m. the day of the meeting.
Sure, yes.
And we can review each other's work then at the workshop.
Sounds good.
Michael, does this all work for you?
Yep.
With the thing, the workshop, we'll probably set the room up a little different. Have a table set out here so you guys can
Each other.
do each other as a cross, things work a little bit easier, and if there's a member from the public or 2 or 10 even, we'll just put them around.
Okay. Have you received any public interest on this?
No, we received one, call about like the hearing tonight, but we never received any formal issue. So, no, I haven't received anything on PUDs. Other than a couple of our past applicants, Mr. Goodrich, the Ridley's, the people who we have had conversations with, that this the considered have all like lit up, that they feel like it's would be awesome to have that tool developed. So like people who are developers who have done a PUD have expressed interest that like that can be a possibility if they'd be interested.
It'd be great to have their input when we do the public hearing to see if they have suggestions to make it better or thoughts that we didn't consider that might be a problem.
I can certainly reach out to them and let them know that we're discussing it. Or at least their design teams.
I think where we know of a couple developers who might want to take advantage of this, I think it would be wise to see if they have suggestions. Or at least if they can let us know, hey, this is, we foresee a problem with this particular thing. Because our intention is to make it as workable as possible, but still having some control over what's there. And so
I think more control, right? Like you're asking the developer, tell us what you want us to do, and then tell all your neighbors what you're going to do so that they can weigh in.
But at the same time, making the process a little more streamlined for them as well. So if that's not what we're accomplishing, it won't get used, and we've wasted all this time. So I'd just like to hear what they have to say.
I think it will get used because I think the cost for someone to get to preliminary plat right now is very expensive. By the time they hire a surveyor and they're trying to lock in on these lines, and they have a big chunk of property, and then to get to final plat, you have certain improvements you have to get to, where if you're just like hiring a surveyor for like this big chunk of ground, draw something up that's kind of pretty, and let's get through the math of water and sewer and traffic, and we'll worry about the details of land surveying and civil engineering and like the nitty-gritties of it later. I do think there's like a six, depending on the size of the property, but like one of the size of the Ridley's property, like a 6-figure savings for the developer. And they could tell a better message to their neighbors of this is what we want to do with it.
Yeah. So after you say that, I feel like what we have in our document is way too specific compared to what your vision of what we actually need out of this. So I'll be interested to hear your input.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think that wraps up item F, old business. Now we're ready for the planning and zoning administrator's report. Always a highlight. I mean, it's a short month, but.
I will say permitting has ramped up. I think last week we received like 11 permits. And then this week there was another one sitting on my desk when I walked in the door, residential building permit. And so we have received, obviously we got a couple of commercial building permits issued last month that you guys should be aware of. One is First Bank got issued through town council. That was a over $500,000 commercial development. They are building a drive-through banking on the east side of the property, and then taking their old drive-through that was kind of on the north and building like a conference room, and then remodeling the inside of that. It's been through state fire marshal review. It actually went through a very extensive review with YDOT and highway code of what's appropriate. Does it reduce? Is it an appropriate location on Chaos Corner for increased traffic? And by removing one access point, YDOT was greatly in favor of reducing that access point that's closer to Bridger Avenue. And so you'll have one access that is the access further to the west into the parking lot. And that kind of wraps up to the north and into their parking. It does provide a fair bit of queuing. I know Commissioner Boyce or Councilwoman Boyce was very much had some concerns, had some conversations. I do feel like we got to a place that the council was not only like supportive of it, but we do feel it's a better solution to what is there. And so they will have a better parking area. The drive-through will add some traffic, but it's separated away from that corner a little bit better. I think we're at a better solution. So would you agree?
I would.
Conversations. So
yeah, I felt like they did a good job of addressing the concerns that I had. And a lot of what my concern was had to do with like people that are like exiting the parking lot the way they have it set up. And, you know, the question of why don't they just make it a one-way through where they're going to have their drive-through, and there were some reasons why that wasn't ideal for them. And I think we required them to have people coming out of that to make a right turn only, which prevents people from crossing the highway. And, you know, with that being so close to Bridger and lots of traffic at the peak times that they expect use of their drive-through. So I'm very happy with how we ended up on that one.
the second one we issued was for the High Country Suites is what it's called now. It is being rebranded to White Pine Adventure Inn. They came in with a commercial building permit that's primarily a remodel of the existing building, where inside of the building they're kind of rebuilding the porte cochere, I think is the proper term.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
Porte cochere. They're making that kind of bigger and fancier. And then as you walk in, they're making the lobby a little larger. I guess when they built that hotel, they didn't put like a continental breakfast area downstairs. That was like an afterthought that got put on the third floor. They took a couple rooms and put it in there. So they're moving that back. They're kind of taking a couple rooms downstairs and building their like lobby slash, it's not a restaurant, I don't want to use that term.
Breakfast area, meeting room.
A couple meeting rooms and a game room for kids. I think they're really trying to target a White Pine family vacation. And then they're remodeling all of the rooms inside of there to just modernize them. And then they're completely redoing the parking lot. They're removing all of the asphalt and reducing significantly the amount of asphalt, probably by about 20 or 30%, in landscaping and natural drainage swales for stormwater. And I mean, they must have 1,000 trees in that.
It's beautiful. It's, if they end up with anything close to what they presented, it's beautiful.
I know.
So net improvement for stormwater to the town, net improvement to the looks, same use. So there was no use change, just a significant remodel. State fire marshal approval is in place, and we just primarily reviewed the parking lot, and from a drainage standpoint, far superior to what is there.
Well thought out use of the parking space, I think.
Nightmare to plow. I don't.
Well, that's, we're not.
Sorry for that. Whoever he is. So the commercial building permit got approved. Approved pending final payment, and they're working with us on that. They sent someone in today, just kind of getting through it. We've had several residential building permits come through that we have issued, and then we did have Mr. Goodrich came in with the 3 4-plex units over here on J Street. So all of those were turned in on those variances that were provided last winter. We had to issue those back. He had a few details. He's never submitted a multi-family. It just requires some lighting and some things that they had to address. And so he's addressing those concerns, and likely, I believe those are actually probably headed to council review and approval, just because the water meters are being proposed to be inside the building. So not that the building permit will be there, but that water review and approval will be there. And then I had 2 more residential, one on Thursday came in the mail, and one, like I said, Monday. So residential building permits in Trails Creek split time, and we had 2 of those come in, and water sewers to go with them. So we're kind of ramping up. I think, it's a nice winter. I think people are really trying to get their ducks in a row, because concrete guys are probably expecting to start earlier than normal and some of that. So we do have some utility companies asking us if we're going to lift the no dig earlier. And as of right now, I will not be recommending the town council that we're still seeing frost, right? So staff is just watching, and what we do every spring is, as we see frost leave, if we feel organized enough and there doesn't seem to be a threat, then we would lift it townwide. We don't do project by town project like we do in the fall. Sometimes we just allow a project to push through mayoral approval, and we notify the council. But at this point in time, likely we'll be going to council in late March or early April to lift it, maybe by April 1st or something, but I don't even want to think about construction in March right now. So it's a really long.
Is it be gone entirely, or is it to a certain depth?
We typically, we bring it to council. If we do an early lift, we're doing it because we don't see frost. And so that's
might get there
in the past. What's that?
So we might get there.
We might. Right now, we actually, as staff, haven't seen frost beyond 3 feet. So
at all winter.
When do you normally lift it?
April 15th. And I will say the last couple of years we have lifted early, and it's been just like a week or so early. Because frost has been out earlier, and I can see frost being out in March this year. I mean, it's supposed to be 45 degrees next week.
It was all weekend.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see it earlier, but.
I actually saw some puddles, that's kind of the telltale sign when you start seeing frost disappear. It's like, here's a puddle of runoff, and then on the next day it's gone. It's like, well, it's soaked into the ground.
See my house.
So it's not there yet. It's not there yet. I've seen it happen. And what the guys start doing is lifting water valves and manholes, and you can see the frost line. So we have a couple areas in town that have big, like right behind the Summit building. We'll go lift those, and we'll check where is the frost before we make that recommendation to council. So
Cool.
Yeah. But this year, I haven't seen the guys. We talked about this in our staff meeting last week. They haven't seen frost anywhere below 3 feet. And so they haven't had a single water freeze up that's been out in the street. We've had a couple of other homes where people forgot to close their, vents in their crawl space vents and stuff like that, but nothing on the street. So anyways, some ongoing projects. We're getting closer. We have a meeting with Blue Blade. I think our Blue Blade is shifting towards implementation now. So we have so many permits built. We feel like it's time. Let's crash course this thing through. And so the discussion, I think, this week is going to be how do we get the portal set up? And we get incomplete applications all the time. So if there's an error, we don't really care. We'll iron those out as we try to figure it out. So that's getting a lot closer. And then we've been trying to push some of our granting projects for Safe Streets and Roads for All over. That one is going to be stressful. I'm just like, I have sat through now 3 federal trainings on safe streets and roads for all, and I still don't have a point of contact from the federal government. So they keep saying that's going to happen. We're asking, how are we going to integrate with YDOT? How are we going to pull this off? And I don't have those answers yet. So, because I don't have somebody to talk to, it's going to be, maybe this was a curse. No, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine.
$1 million curse.
It's going to be fine. But right now it's like, oh, this is going to be different than dealing with a state agency where, even though it's a little bureaucratic, like this is beyond the bureaucratic layers that we typically have dealt with on big grants. So we will get through it. It's going to take us somewhere. Anyway, that's your guys' report. I'm sorry, it wasn't the best. I do anticipate that we are going to see a lot of building permits in the next month and start ramping up.
Seems like a good year to try to build something because it's been so nice. You watch it rain every day. It's so crazy.
The other thing that PNC should be aware of is we did take it to council at the last meeting in February. Wind River Resorts officially expired on February 27th. That formal notification has been sent to the developer. So right now, though that chunk of ground owned by Mr. Goodrich north of the elementary school is zoned for RRD, it does not have an approved preliminary plat. So to restart the process, we start from ground zero on the subdivision.
Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. And on Pronghorn Crossing, they're gonna come into compliance when the concrete guy's ready.
Here's the hoping. I've had some correspondence with them about different curb molds for their curb machine to meet the town's code. And so we're just I need to poke them probably for an updated schedule. They're not anticipated to start until April, right? But it was very clear that when the law was extended by council expected a July 1st substantial completion date. Where we're at.
Well, thank you. Any other questions for the staff? Any commissioner member comments? Yeah.
No, I sent the email out, so Ryan will just let us know about Monday when
Yeah, I will.
we know.
Yep. And I think we're ready to schedule the next regular commission meeting where we may be having we know we'll hopefully have the public hearing on the PUD and maybe on an application. So April 6th, 5 p.m.
Is that Easter? No.
Easter, that is the day after Easter.
Yes.
But I think the holiday for that is Friday.
Okay.
So if that works for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. We will see you all on April 6th, and I think I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. We are adjourned at 7:17 p.m.
See y'all.
See ya. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike.
Sorry, I'm Michael. I ended up really right as you said that.
Feel good.